Welcome to the
Sometimes
Into
you
the
fuck
Wild
up.
podcast. I'm Sailor Pixel.
And I'm unprofessional Dove or Weathervane. And this is my unprofessional podcast, The Sailor Pixel.
Hi, everybody. It's another week. It's another week of hanging out and talking all things WildRP and the world of Red Dead roleplay. How was your week, Dove?
Chaotic, but not because of roleplay, because I have a fucking new gremlin in my
Okay.
life.
You do have a new gremlin in your life. You have the
I
cutest,
do. Bubba,
cutest little gremlin I've ever done seen, and I think you need to
Bubba,
show everybody
come here. Well,
your
he's
new
kind of,
fur baby because he is so cute.
he is so cute. And he's the most energetic thing I've ever met in my life, and it's a lot.
It
His
is.
name's Bubba Beef.
Papa Beef, look at that guy. What the heck?
He's super sweet. He's an attention whore,
I mean, that's all of us, if I'm honest.
basically. How about your week?
Good. I had a lot of roleplay this week, minus there was a little hiccup again this week, but it was very short lived compared to some of the previous ones. Much love to the
Yeah.
staff team for getting things rolling again. But
Oh, yeah, it was down again, wasn't it?
yeah, for about a day, there was a
Yeah.
bit of a challenge there. So I think that's been stressful for some folks, but I'm glad it wasn't as long of an outage and we got through it. Um, I'm a little sickly. I'm kind of getting over a cold, um, but that's life. Sometimes I got to roll with
Get
the
that
punches.
Get that vitamin C in you.
Vitamin C, that would be the way to go. Lots of returning visitors in the chats. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. Hi, Laughing
Hello.
Row. Hi, 1501. Desi's in the chat. We appreciate all of you guys. Um, we had a great episode last week. Last week we were talking with Senior Deputy Kirk's tough love law perspective and the changes that are
Hmm.
going on with her and all of the history she's brought to the crossing. So if you didn't see last week's interview with Erin Rolsdice, she's fantastic. She's such a great
Super
role
fun to talk to.
player, and it was a great conversation. So please
Yeah.
go check out the vods from last week if you missed it. Um, Now
Well,
our Saints Daily perspective. I don't know that
um,
we have a whole lot of news, but there's a few things that happened
yeah,
this week.
a little unfortunate. Um, I mean, we could talk about what happened last night,
We
but
could
that's
talk.
just about the only news that I have, really.
Yeah. There's. I would just say Rhodes is booming. That's the place to
Yep.
be. It's kind of been the place to be now for a couple of weeks. A lot of the businesses are popping up there.
Hmm.
I know Stumpy's running the general store now. That's exciting. Um,
Mm,
so
is
that's
he?
a he was as of last I heard. Maybe not. I don't know. He was in Blackwater. Now he was in Rhodes. Maybe it's a 1 day thing, but he was there. I know that there was a lot of shenanigans in Rhodes Parlor House this week. Um, some of
I
it
missed it.
circling around Millie, some of it not circling around Millie, but there's some drama in the Rhodesian world of dust and clay. I know that there's also new businesses popping up in the city.
Hmm.
There's a new postal service being run, which is exciting. Um, and
Saint Denis bubbled twice yesterday, I think.
yeah, it was pretty. It looked pretty bubbled down there. And I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not really sure what's happening out west at the moment, but I know the Alvidados have been very active um, in
Yeah, Bubba.
defending their
Hey,
territory. So there's been a lot of excitement that way.
come here.
Dead Set's been having some challenges um, with with their butt-ins with law, and there's all sorts of drama going on in the world of RP. A little bit less in the
Yeah.
know in some things, but I encourage everyone to
Well,
check it out and follow all these storylines because there's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Rhodes is not the worst. Listen, I Jolene says it every time. Jolene was like an OG. I like Rhodes for a
I,
long
I
time.
love Rhodes. It's
And
great. Everything's close together. There's like enough space that people can hang out. It's like I'd take Rhodes over Valentine any day.
I think it's cute. It's a cute little place. It's very like
My only
I don't
complaint is
know.
the
I think
dust.
you
I
like
wish
to
the Rhodes dust didn't
yeah.
like quite stick on your. It's kind of
It's
like being
hard
in
for a goth
Valentine.
girly. It's hard for a goth girly there. It
Yeah.
really is.
If you're wearing black, it's not a good look.
Nope. Gotta go wash your hands like 5 times. No. Come here. Sorry. If he barks at some point, I apologize ahead of time.
No, you're
I
fine.
only had him
We
for
can't
less than
hear
a
him.
week. So
Um, you like the layout of Valentine, Dusty says. Jameson says strawberry is greater than everywhere. I like strawberry, but it is not a good place if you are not Civ adjacent because that
yeah.
porch is right.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's also true in Rhodes, but Rhodes there's like a little bit of space. You can kind of go to the
I
telegrams
get
without getting
so much
seen.
anxiety going into strawberry on
Especially if you're
Pearl.
wanted for a significant amount of time, like you're
Hmm.
getting stopped for sure.
Yeah. If because the rangers can see you and just let them know too, even if they're not there. And if they know, if the rangers know who you are,
That's it. No, you're
yeah,
cooked. You're done for.
it's
What?
safe. Well, that's why.
So we have a pretty cool guest this week, which is
Hmm.
why we're sitting here in Rhodes.
So early, also on a
Yeah. What
Sunday.
the heck? We're early
This
on
is
a
a Sunday
Sunday.
on in Rhodes. Yeah,
So
pretty crazy.
what's that about?
Well, we've got Mick in today.
Mick Nerfman, Mick
Nerfman.
Murphy of the Pavee.
We've got a Pavee representative. Pretty
How?
exciting.
Welcome to the Into the Wild podcast, Nerfman. How are you doing today?
I am very good. Thank you, both of these, for having me here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much.
No.
We're honored that you decided to accept our invite and be on the
Hmm.
podcast.
No, I'm delighted. I'm delighted,
Hmm.
and I'm very
You've been in the
glad. I'm very
server for
happy
quite
that,
some time.
people are enjoying things out of Roads right now.
Oh, I'm sure
I'm
you
a,
are.
if you
Got a lot of
couldn't
traffic going on.
tell, I'm a bit of a fan of the town. My characters lived there for a decent stint of time. Despite its clay and its one street highway, if you will, but
Mm,
um,
that's
it's been a
great.
blast, and I'm over the moon with everything that's been going on right now. So I just look forward to more of it. That's the truth of it.
I bet.
You're, you've been kind of one of the OG, very long-standing member of the server with your character of Mick. Did you play anybody before that?
On Wild, I didn't. Wild, I came in with Mick. He was. I mean, I came in. It was so long ago now. I can't exactly place whether it was the end of 1900 or the start of 1901. But he's been around for a long time, and it's been fun seeing kind of his progression over time. Where it was just him and his brother, and trying to carve out their own place in society of sort of Rhodes, Saint Denis, and Valentine, and finding their place, and then kind of how they just built on that over time, over the years, and how they found themselves to be now. So,
Did you ever think that he would be in the position that he is now? Like,
um, I think it is something we definitely always had in the back of our mind because
yeah.
we played similar characters on another server. So this is
Mhm.
kind of like Wild was kind of like the 2.0, the perfected attempt at doing the same thing. Because funnily enough, we actually played a similar kind of we Irish traveler community, but we were actually based out of Van Horn on a previous server, and we ran the pub
Oh.
there.
Oh,
A little
cool.
bit like how Wallaby did, and a couple of
Mhm.
other characters have done since then, Gavin Summers and the like. So we kind of took what we learned from that experience and then reworked it, dropped the bits we didn't like, and we committed more to the aspect of being a Irish traveler and living out of the caravans and that kind of thing because it's just a very very unique take and spin on doing kind of a similar thing.
It is, yeah. I don't think I've met any other characters in other servers that have something similar, to be honest. Very unique.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would have in the sense if anybody's ever met a, a Romani traveler or something like that. They're
Yeah.
similar very culturally. In the sense that they live their how they live their lives, but obviously the Romani come from you know sort of India direction, and they've made their mark across all of Europe and North Africa. But the Irish travellers or the Pavee are a very distinct group related to Ireland itself.
Now, we always ask these questions of our guests, but what kind of came before Wild? How did you get into roleplay in general?
Actually, it's funny when I think about it. I actually, looking back on it, started role playing very early. When I think about it, this is going to sound crazy. My first roleplay experience was actually on a Minecraft server.
On
It was
Minecraft. Wow.
What?
It was yeah, it was a text-based roleplay server on Minecraft. But it was through the lens
Interesting.
of like a medieval fantasy. It was like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones style, dwarves,
Oh,
elves, magic. It was on a server called Lord of the Craft. And I was like maybe, I started when I was maybe 13 or 14 role playing over there. Um and
interesting.
that was a blast. And then I didn't really do much after. I kind of dipped in and out of that for a couple of years, and it wasn't really until COVID that myself and my buddy Jim, who plays Seamus Murphy, um, he was like, hey, there's this whole Red role play scene. It's like, will we give it a go? And I said, yeah, why not? Let's do it. We started on a couple of public servers and we kind of felt it out a little bit, and then we ended up on a server called Wild West RP, and
Yep.
we played there for maybe a year or two. It was about just over a year, maybe two, and then we played briefly on a server called PRC, the People's Roleplay Community, which I think went on to be called TRP, Twitch Roleplays. I think that's what
Oh,
it's called.
Okay.
mhm.
We've heard a few people talk
Um,
about that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I played with on that server that came over here. Some really OG gangs from Wild actually were over on PRC at the time.
Oh,
So characters like Robbie Gold or Becker Lang and the Lang Gang, like they were characters we interacted with on PRC. And then when we brought um, the Murphys to Wild, we ended up kind of bumping into similar or adjacent characters, and it was or the same players at the very least, and it was a lot of fun. So there was kind of that steady progression. But yeah, coming from text-based roleplay in Minecraft has definitely been a change
that's a
for
new one. I
sure.
have not. And I thought I had a unique one.
Yeah, yeah,
Jesus.
it's a pretty unique
I
start, I
mean,
think.
coming from text-based roleplay roots, I get you. Not, I mean, Minecraft is state of the art compared to where I came from. So I definitely, but the pain of typing everything out,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Oh no, it's
you
not
know.
even it's not a pain. I just wanna play the advocate for the other side. It is so fun because you can like just the way someone like sets down a glass. Like
That's true. You can be a lot more
You
vibes.
could be
descriptive in how
very
you,
descriptive and
yeah,
intentional.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I role
yeah.
play with people with like paragraphs worth of like
Hmm.
things and it's just like it's such a I don't know. It scenes are almost like heavier, more heavy.
Yes. I
But
think you can tell though some of the role players that come from a text-based background, because they
yeah,
tend to be a lot more heavy with their slash me's
yeah, yeah,
than other role players who kind of focus a lot more on just the voice side of things,
Yeah.
which so many amazing people with their voice acting and their ability and their range.
Mhm.
Um, but I always appreciate people who use slash me's to be overtly descriptive and very, very immersive in that sense.
I
Yeah.
definitely sometimes feel like I'm
Mhm.
pausing, or else like somebody asks me a question, I'm like, I have to type what my character's doing before I start talking, and
I think
sometimes
people get that
it
though. So it's
yeah,
like,
sometimes it's
yeah.
like I feel like there's a bit of a
Yeah.
gap. Yeah. Um,
Sometimes you know what's going to be said though, and you can kind of pre-prepare and have some
right.
things copy pasted ready to go,
Mm.
which is something I've done in the past. Because like I know certain how certain things may play, but so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it anyway.
I always get too nervous to do too many slash me's. I'm like, am I gonna be annoying?
Yeah, it's try. Sometimes you have to like, and I feel guilty about this too. But like having, you kind of like furrows a brow or squints. You know, like
Hmm.
obviously those are pretty like common, but trying to
Yeah,
also mix in
they're easy
some
to
things
do.
that are a little bit more creative.
Mm.
Hmm.
They
Um,
definitely add more to the scene,
Yeah,
even the smaller ones like the squints, you know.
yeah,
I
that's
love
true.
doing the little like glances to characters in the background, or like, especially like
Yeah,
when I'm in
yeah.
disguise. Like that. I like to throw
I
my
love,
hints to
I love
like,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Using them to kind of tell a another sort of narrative within a scene. You know, like if somebody is in the crowd that your character doesn't like and you glare at them or scoff at something they say or
Hmm.
something like that, like it adds a little bit more sort of like, oh, there's something else going on there that maybe I want to pay a bit more attention to. Um which can be fun sometimes because Mick definitely has his opinions about an awful lot of characters.
I'm sure he does. He seems like
uh,
a very
So
opinionated person.
and he doesn't he isn't afraid to tell people when he doesn't like them.
Yeah, he's a
well,
strong
they yeah,
character. Definitely.
very strong character, and
Hmm.
having all those connections has to be hard to keep track of. Do you have some sort of method? Do you take notes? Do you have a notion or a notebook that you use to write down what's going on, or do you just keep it all up in your head?
It's definitely a bit of both. I mean, previously, this sort of iteration of like the Pavee and the people kind of up around Gallows Hill. It's This has definitely been my experience at the kind of foreground of it because previously, Mick had his brother there alongside him for most of it, and the player unfortunately, just for life reasons, has decided to take a bit of a step back from roleplay. He's still around here and there, but um, back then he was very much more of the public figure and the front man, if you will, in the kind of pairing that they had. So there wasn't like one overarching leader in the group. It was the two brothers at the top. One of them dealt with stuff more externally, and the other one dealt with things more internally. And it was just how they kind of shared, and it was this kind of fun, enjoyable balance between it. So, learning to kind of manage, so many different groups and contacts and stuff like that. It can be fun and very challenging at times because so many times have I met characters and then had to be like, I completely forget what this character's name is. And, and
I certainly
you
struggle
know,
with names. One thing I used to do a very long time ago was take down people's like home key numbers, so I could like, and then I would write down in a book their number and their character name. But then I stopped doing that because when I started playing Law, because I didn't want to like recognize people who were changing their look. So, but early
yeah.
on, I tried to resort to that because I could never recognize. I've gotten better over time of like recognizing faces, recognizing people as you get used to the differences
The
between
clothing helps
characters.
too. Like usually
Clothing
people have
helps,
like a
yeah.
certain vibe with how they always look. So
Yeah, and
it's
I mean,
pretty
I don't,
helpful.
I don't, I don't think I could hide Mick if I tried.
I don't
You
think
know,
so.
No.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
he's got a pretty stand. He stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Even if I tried to put him in a cowboy hat and cowboy boots,
Hmm.
um, I
I love
don't
that though.
think
Like that's what I try
I
to
don't
strive
think you
for with
get
my
away with it.
characters. It's
Uh,
good. It means that you've really made a solid character that I mean, if you can recognize them coming into town from a mile away, like that's amazing.
Yeah, and he's rode on the exact same
Cute.
horse since his foundation.
Hmm.
And it's always the fur coat and the flat cap and gold jewelry everywhere.
Yep.
and his glistening gold
Beard.
smile.
You have to
It's
remember the
it's
beard.
it's hard to
Yeah.
Dead
mistake him.
giveaway.
It's grown. It used to be much shorter, and now I can't imagine him with a shorter beard. It's so strange. Um,
Was this intentional in your storytelling for Mick that he would be very consistent, a very iconic character archetype, or is it just how you've enjoyed playing him and it's become that way?
um, I think I just enjoy, being a little bit more of a recognizable character. I mean, at his foundation, he was a character that blended in almost to a T with like local NPCs. Like when I first started, I would just kind of have him go between saloons and bars, and he would sit down at a table and eat food and just drink, and he just listened to people's conversations because most people thought he was an NPC and would talk about stuff in front of him. And he would just start listening to all of people's drama and all the stuff they had going on in their lives. And occasionally I used to chime in and chirp up and let them know that I was just listening to all of their secrets and stories.
Surprise
But
them.
but over time, his look definitely kind of evolved and became more iconic and definitely stood out more. And I think in the sort of
Bye-bye.
how the character developed in and of itself, I think even he has a bit of an arrogance about that, where he's like he walks around and he's like, yeah, he's like, I know everybody knows what I look like. You know what I mean? He's not trying to hide from anybody.
Yeah. Crackle in the chat says Nerf is one of the most talented actors I've ever encountered, and the Pavee are the blueprint for
Aw.
immersive group role play,
Ah,
which is high
Definitely.
praise, but
that
I
is
wholeheartedly
Absolutely.
agree with it. You bring a level of. There are certain people I think in the server who are really good at just being a human in the world. And I think you
yeah.
really
Mhm.
really bring Mick to life in that manner.
I
Thank
think a
you.
lot of it is the like slow
That's so
burn.
flattering.
It's a slow
Yeah,
burn
that
role
is
play.
that is the slow burn. It's I've often kind of maybe been a little bit overcritical of myself at times for maybe being a bit too slow burn, because there have been people who've kind of RP'd with me or with the group in general, and I think they've just maybe found that we're a little too slow for some people, because I think that's to be expected. When you play in a server like this, you are bound to get people who like what I sometimes call fast food role play, in a sense. So you've got a very wide span of what people enjoy. Some people are in the middle, some people like to be involved in a lot of shootouts and, high octane, high energy role play and scenes. And, you know, it's finding the kind of middle ground between all of that is where I think it's kind of perfect for everything. But no, I definitely love the much more slow, real, immersive RP. Like you said, like feeling like a human. Um, like that's what I kind of want out of what I want out of role play when I go into it is I do want to feel like I'm stepping into a completely different world, and everybody that I interact with, I want to feel like, they're a part of the world. And so what I want to try and portray on Mick and the people there is that he feels like he belongs. Like he feels like he could be, you know, a character in a movie or a TV show, or like somebody that's written into the video game you're playing. Like, so I don't want him to feel out of place in any sense, that he's as much as a part of the furniture as anything else is.
So what do you
You
keep
do an
in
amazing job.
mind? Yeah, you absolutely do. What do you keep in mind to are there little things that you do maybe day to day? Do you have a routine for Mick? Is there certain elements to telling his story that allow to keep you kind of grounded in that context?
Um, yeah, and I think it can be a bit of an unpopular idea, but I I always support like the idea of being, as much as there is obviously, you have the 32 server population limit across Red M, just because that's unfortunately the way that the function of Red M only works, but I just love being more location based than anything else. To be like, this character lives within this kind of space, and he kind of his whole routine and daily life is centered around these kind of locations. So like Mick, he rises in hit the camp, and he'll make his way down to Telegrams. He might go to the parlor house for a bite to eat, and he'll potter around town for a bit until he has a reason to step out and do something else. But I like to be able to be in an area so that if anybody wants to find my character, they know to go to where he lives, because that's where he's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really just makes your character more of an anchor that way. I kind of want to backtrack just a tiny little bit. When it comes to the slow burn stuff, I'm very curious because Mick knows a lot of people, right? And so you know the people who are very high octane, and you know the people who are slow burn, and you know who the people who are very like in between. Like, I guess I'm just curious how you balance like knowing how to progress a story with a certain character and how to slow burn with another character. You know what I mean? Do you find yourself doing that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, there's there's definitely a fine line, because especially with Mick, in the sense of working in the parameters of a fence. He's a gray civilian is generally how I kind of consider him. Like, I don't, as much as he very much is a the head of like a quote unquote Irish crime family, or like an Irish mob, or whatever sense it may be. His idea of it is like he's just a civilian that kind of sits in a gray area, where he deals with both people of law abiding stature and the unlawful stance. So when it comes to that, I've always been of the opinion that I think, now, I don't know if everybody would agree, but I always find that the role of like a fence, quote unquote, within the role play context is, in my opinion, a unwhitelisted server role, is what I like to consider it. My role in the server is to provide a service to criminals who want to get rid of their gold and their stolen goods, and they can make quick cash on it and not have to worry about having to move it around or getting caught with it, and providing cool, meaningful scenes and development from there.
Mm.
um but there is characters who will approach you in the sense that they're a little bit more transactional in their behavior, whereas some people are definitely more there for the role play. But it's you kind of deal with both of them, because that's just the way that being on a server like this works. And you take each thing in stride, and the ones who are there for more story and more relationships and that kind of thing, you find ways to build things out and expand upon them. And you take things that are a bit more transactional as they come, because people have their stories and their priorities, and that's completely fair, and you just kind of have to have a bit of respect for that.
Yeah. I mean, they make it pretty clear usually when they come up, especially as a fence, especially when you're dealing with gold bars and people who just robbed a bank and they just want to get their cash really quick and head on to the next thing, or someone who actually maintains a conversation and wants a bit more.
Yeah, and I'm a sucker for wanting to draw people in, and having a bit of a back and forth, and poking a bit of fun and having a laugh and telling a story, and whatever it may be. I always find that enjoyable, just even for me
Yeah.
personally, having a bit of a laugh in that sense.
I mean, you do a really good job of. I know Jolene has had some interactions, but I really appreciated you kind of went the extra mile to have a conversation with her and make her feel like known, I guess. And it feels I definitely have gotten that vibe from your character that you do that with a lot of people, which is really nice
Yeah, I can second
in terms of
that.
having a laugh and coming on around.
Talking
Yeah.
about the immersion part, like I remember coming up one morning and, Millie just walked up to the camp and Mick invited her around the fire and I think Ailish was there and we were just sitting around the campfire and it was just like you could almost smell that morning like breeze smell and sit around the fire. It was just
Oh, that's
it was
cute.
such a cool vibe. Yeah.
The sausages and the eggs in the pan.
That's right.
But look,
That's so
I mean,
cute.
if you are willing to give, time and effort from your character to me, then how am I not supposed to respond to that and respect it by giving you the same in return?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's just the
Absolutely.
way I look at it. Like if you want to come to Mick and you want to have a conversation and you want to give time and grace and extend that offer, it's like I think it'd be rude if I didn't do it in return. Because you never know what can come of it. You could get some crazy story arcs that stem from it where Mick is generally never at the forefront of stories, but he's always in there somewhere.
I can remember a very distinct song that he is responsible for creating.
I wonder which one it
Yeah,
is.
Yeah, I've never
yeah,
heard of it actually
Mm,
before. Never. Yeah.
yeah.
mm.
Do you know what? Unironically, I said this so silly to some people in the Murphys and the Discord and stuff, and it's a little silly. And I understand that, but like I kind of just I've just been kind of sitting back and laughing at this kind of age of shithousery and shit talking over via like poems and stuff that I've seemed to have started. And receiving these telegrams about all different characters from different parts of the cross, and then everybody's like, trying to. I like to call it propaganda wars.
I love
Yep.
it.
Where
It's
you
so
where
good.
you just
That's
you
literally what
just
it is. Yep.
you just start like coming up with information that you either know and you embellish it a little bit. And listen, the truth should never get in the way of a good story. Is always
Oh,
what I
absolutely.
Yeah.
think. So
I remember when you first put those posters up, or when somebody put those posters up around the crossing, I think, and I read that and I was like, I have to sing this. Like this
It
is a
was so
perfect song. And other people came up to Millie and they're like, Hey, have you seen that poster? Like, might be worth starting a war over that. Like,
yeah, but
oh yeah.
it's also just like a bit of another little lily pad in the sense of a conflict where it's
yeah,
like it may not necessarily be a face-to-face confrontation, but it's a war of words in another sense.
I love it.
And that then leads on to the next thing where there's going to be a physical altercation, or there might be somebody shot, or whatever it may be.
But it
But
adds so much tension to the story, right? Because, you could just show up and shoot them, but this creates so much more story. It creates so much more dialogue. It creates stuff for people to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Putting those seeds out of the universe really make a difference in seeding the world for story.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it affects an awful lot more characters. It almost
That's what I was gonna say.
draws in, double, you multiply the amount of people that are now kind of almost paying attention to what's going on between two groups. And you can use it to sort of your advantage or to anybody's disadvantage. And it's this idea that you can affect, people or characters and their standing or reputation. And it's almost you're almost firing shots at who they are rather
Mhm.
than them themselves.
Now, the Pavee camp in Rose is such a distinct visual and social fixture, like not just in the server, but in the world of Red Dead. And you mentioned in your previous servers having done something similar in Van Horn. Why? How did you land there? And have you ever thought about it being somewhere else, or are you like you've been pretty established your entire time in the server in the Pavee camp?
Mm. Um, well, Rhodes is just up there I think, as probably personally one of my favorite locations in Red Dead. You know, I think the only probably town visually that gives it a run for its money is Strawberry.
Mhm.
Um, and going from there though, the camps was just a bit of a no-brainer, you know, because we wanted to come into Wild, and we wanted to focus in on, not like, we wanted to focus in on being Pavee, on being an Irish traveler, you know, like, and absorbing and having the orbit of that particular culture sort of be the foundation for who these characters are. You know, even though, yes, they are travelers and they should be moving around an awful lot and they should be more nomadic, like much of the rest of the server is. Um, I just always like lending people the opportunity to have a location to consistently find people at. And I don't think there's a better location in the server that represents, you know, the culture of travelers better than a bunch of caravans or wagons in a ring around a fire.
Oh
And,
yeah, it's perfect.
you know, and it lends itself to the storytelling of, like, explaining who Mick is and the kind of life that he came from in Ireland and yada yada. And there was a couple of times where we've had character arcs where, you know, that campsite's been burnt down on a couple of occasions, and we've, you know, done arcs where it was burnt down, and we did a whole arc where we traveled over the course of multiple weeks, you know, up through Roanoke, across Amberino, down into Big Valley, and, you know, that was an awful lot of fun. And we stayed at the campsite outside Blackwater. That was another one that we nearly used. The sort of big one with the cooking pot just on the fringes of Blackwater. But
Yeah,
I
that's a
Oh,
think,
good one
I didn't
too.
even think of
Like
that. Oh yeah.
by the I was actually
Hmm.
just in my mind about that, the one by the telegrams.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Just up the road from the telegrams. That's because that's another gorgeous campsite. You've got tents everywhere, and
Yeah.
it's the most perfect place to pull your wagons up to, and, you know, have people up by. And you're on the fringes of the town, so, like, you're still kind of allowing yourself the ability to kind of bring the kind of criminal element into the town without
Hmm.
them being in the town entirely, which is, you know, I think it plays beautifully into the kind of role that the Pavee present to everybody as a whole.
That's kind of what's really great about the location, right? Is it's just outside enough. Like you're just out of view. You're there, but you're just out of view. So you can kind of get away with some things, and you can have those criminals come in and they're not really worried necessarily about the law, except the last time Millie was at your camp.
Yeah, it's definitely happened. It's definitely happened. The the department has definitely stumbled up there a few times when there's been some pretty significant characters
Mm.
sat around or stood around that fire, and you know, it's entertaining trying to explain why they're there. Let me tell you that anyway.
Well, that's awesome because it kind of gives like the people who live in town, civilians, like a looming presence almost. Like they're there, and there's a good possibility that there are some even more dangerous people hanging out with them.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what's going on. So it's a cool little like haunting presence in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I've always adored, even for the longest time, and is, you know, without it necessarily having to be said, there was almost like this unspoken rule that seemed to sort of establish itself over the years where, you know, people would arrive to the campsite, but not everybody would organize to be there at the same time. So,
Mm.
like, there was times where you had two groups arrive and they hated each other.
Oh
And, like,
no.
or they were actively at war, and I was like,
Mm.
Jesus, how are we gonna? We're all gonna get shot. This is gonna be a disaster.
A mess.
But for some reason, for whatever reason, they each decided the way it always seemed to fall, that the cards seemed to fall, was that they were like, look, we're gonna just be here and do what we want to do, and we're gonna leave. We're not gonna cause any trouble. It was almost like the the little gated, the little fenced off community up on that hill was like hallowed ground in a sense where, or no man's land, neutral territory where people who hated each other's guts could stand within arm's reach of one another and sort of have these verbal back and forth without anything rising or beyond it. And it was,
That's
whoa,
a lot
there's
of
been,
respect. That's a lot of
there's,
respect for people to be able to do that around you.
Mhm.
Like that
there's
means that
been
you
some
really have
say crazy
established yourself
scenes.
with a lot of people.
That was kind of, I think that was the moment where I realized, I was like, oh damn, I was like, we might actually have some serious here, you know?
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, which, you know, that was, I mean, obviously it felt amazing to be like, oh God, that's really cool. Because I think the group as a whole have sort of slowly evolved from, you know, being just Mick and his brother, and then they met a guy called Joe Brady, and those three, and which is hilarious to me because the character Joe Brady was a character we met in server who was also an Irish traveler, the only one of the only people I've ever met that played an Irish traveler before ever, and we met him, and it just happened so organically, and we joined together, and the three of them kind of became the founding fathers of that campsite in Rhodes, for lack of a better term. And you know, they carved their way into the community in Rhodes. You know, they had a bit of a troubling relationship with Flood in the gun store for a bit of a time, and you know, then they got to know, you know, the likes of Zhang Wei and Taipan and Santino and Cesare DiCenzo and the Barlettis and the Morettis and you know the whole
Hmm.
community based out of like Saint Denis and Van Horn and Valentine and Emerald Ranch, like those all those areas were communities where we slowly started building up presence and reputation to the point now where you know they've Mick has, I feel, kind of reached a stage in his life and his character's career where you know they're not just the humble beginnings, you know, kind of pawn shop scam artist kind of deal makers where you know now he's definitely he's a bit of a player, and he's owns businesses, and he influences a lot of the things that happens in Rhodes and in the surrounding areas, and he definitely feels like he's reached kind of that like Tony Soprano level, if you want to call it, where he's a bit of a figurehead in a sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Actually, somebody dropped in the
Yeah.
chat earlier that he's kind of like this godfather figure.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
That's what I was thinking of. Exactly.
Now, like the camp's naturally open to the elements, and people could pass through there. Do you find that you get random encounters with people in the camp, or do people that come there usually know you? And if it is somebody random, how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, I mean, the random encounters honestly are hilarious sometimes. You know, oftentimes we will have met characters and they will have been told not to ride through the camp before we've even met them. Like somebody else has probably
Oh,
told them. Like we met a character the other day who told us that he'd never met us before, but he'd heard about this. And but oftentimes you get people because I think there's moonshine deliveries that deliver to the camp, and there is, you know, obviously the fire there is an active place where you can cook. You can cook in the fire, or there's an oven inside one of the caravans you can use. So oftentimes people go up there when they want to cook, and you know we're always like, yeah, absolutely, come on, use the fire. Don't be worrying about it. Like you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to come up here, use the fire, sit down with us, and have it. Just allows anybody to come up, and you never know who you're gonna get. You know,
Yeah.
and you get some really cool characters who you may not never interact with otherwise, and you know, they feel welcome enough and comfortable enough to come up and sit around with us, and you end up making some interesting interesting relations for sure.
Have you guys ever had somebody kind of stroll up when you're in the middle of like a serious conversation around the fire? Something a little bit more personal to the Pavee? I'm sure that was
Yeah,
interesting.
we have generally, if that's the case, somebody kind of catches them in transit almost, because you have a bit of a way to walk from the gates to the fire.
Yeah.
So sometimes people will be caught in transit, or the way things have panned out over the years is sometimes the people will just wait by the gate until somebody comes and gets them. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
again, that's not anything that was ever necessarily said, but it's just something people did, I guess, out of respect, and it's very
Mhm.
flattering.
Yeah, that's
It's always
awesome.
it's always been very, very, very flattering.
It's almost like I think we're gonna keep going back to the Godfather aspect of it, where there's like um a respectful fear, if that makes sense. Like it's not like they're cowering, but it's like they respect you and they understand the consequences of certain actions. It's not an act of fear, but it's it's
Even
something
the
that
fear
really
of
kind of holds
losing
weight.
respect, right? The fear, it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a fear of consequence more than a fear of like losing the respect of the Pavee or losing the.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there is also, I mean, like like Doug Superkill said, his character was up at camp before when other people showed up that he was actively at war with. So there is the sense that sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when you walk up there, you never quite know who's going to be around that fire, whether it's going to be somebody you like or somebody that wants you dead. So there is because Mick has always made it very clear that he will work with everybody unless he's given a reason not to.
Right.
Um, so that's always been the sort of way that he's done things. People have always have referred to Mick sort of being neutral in a sense. And to a degree he has, but I've always said Mick always picks a side, but the side he picks is of himself and of his people, you know?
Right.
So he often acts in the best interests of himself, like basically every other organized crime or gang related group where everybody's quite
Right.
self-interested, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
You want to improve your own standing or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So
Always looking out for yourself. Then the people you care about afterward. How it goes.
Is there a specific landmark or spot in and around Rhodes, maybe outside of the Pavee camp, that holds the most sentimental history for Mick?
oh, that's a question. Let me think about that one. Sentimentality. It's a pretty well-known spot. It's gorgeous. Everybody, I think, loves it as a location. But Ringneck Creek is just so close by, and a couple of characters have been married there, and Mick used
Is
was
that
it was
the
a
little
reg.
campsite near the dry creek bed? Is that?
So Ringneck Creek is when you head north of Rhodes, the little sort of pool and river that runs
Yeah.
through the creek south of like the manor with the basement.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's a gorgeous little
Okay.
area, and especially when you're there, like dawn, when the sun starts coming through the leaves and the trees, it's just stunning. It's just a gorgeous little area to kind of hang around. Other than that, I'd say Face Rock is an area that Mick kind of frequents, and if he wants a bit of privacy or alone time, or wants to have a bit of a private chat with a character that he won't be interrupted, because Lord knows the camp is not where you want to go if you don't want to be interrupted. So that the Face Rock is definitely up there as one of his more sentimental locations.
I think he's chewing on something that he shouldn't be.
Get him.
I'll be right. I'll be right back.
Get him. Sick him.
Sorry. I don't know what he's
Um,
chewing on. Okay, 1 second.
Okay.
the life of a new puppy. Mick is famous for playing his cards incredibly close to the chest. And, as a storyteller, how do you keep scenes engaging and maybe full of tension when you want them to have tension, when your characters, maybe purposely refusing to reveal their hand.
Um, I think obviously slash me's play into it a little bit, where you can kind of tell a story through slash me's, and stuff like that without explicitly saying certain things.
Yeah.
And I always think that it's the same thing when I watch like TV shows or movies. I always prefer pieces of drama or entertainment that when they present something to you, they they show, you know, don't tell sort of thing. I think it's better to let people kind of make their own ideas and assumptions, because I think there's an awful lot more to be said in what's left unsaid or what isn't said. So there's an awful lot of innuendo and nuance and kind of dancing around things that I think is fun to play on, where you can have these really tense, you know, immersive scenes without necessarily explicitly saying what you're going to do or what's going to happen, because I think there's a lot more fun in not knowing it sometimes, and sitting there guessing about what's going to happen, and then you have a big reveal.
I think that's it's an important moment, right? Because sometimes you want to. So many ways of telling a story, right? It doesn't have to all be in that verbal acting, like you said.
I mean, I think that probably
Yeah,
goes back to the slash me's a lot.
Yeah.
yeah. But then again, like it does sort of play into, you have different characters, as well.
Mm.
Like there's characters who I think Mick is definitely more to the point with. He doesn't really dance around with some characters, because he's like, I'm not. He's like, either things aren't going to get misunderstood, or I want you to understand exactly what I'm saying. Um, so there is a difference between it, where some characters, you kind of have these really intense um back and forth moments with, like, I've had them with, you know shout out Derek, Zhang Wei from Taipan. He's one of the masters of it, where you sit down and you have a conversation with him, and there's an awful lot being said, but nothing's really being said, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of words, and
A lot
there's a
of
lot of
dancing around.
yeah. So
Hmm.
he's amazing at it,
He
and
is. He is
so,
such a good
like,
example.
when you sit down in front of Derek, and it's always been kind of like Mick and Jiang Wei, or Shay and Jiang Wei, have always had these kind of war of the wits, or the battle of words, in a sense, where they sit in a room and they definitely know what side of the room they're on, but it's an awful lot more sort of verbose and verbal battles than necessarily fighting with fisticuffs or knives. So that's been it's been a
God,
fun
I
way to
bet
play with
that
it.
must be fucking interesting. Really, be in a room with Mick and Wei.
It's a lot of fun.
I've
I
heard
I
there's a
just
little bit of challenge between those two. I got a little bit of tea that they're poking at each other a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's definitely it's definitely the potential for something. I'll tell you that. I mean, they have such a long history together as two groups. Um, it took us the better part of probably a year or so to reach a point where we felt like our group and our organization was kind of reaching a level playing field, to speak of. Um, but they've always been, the Taipan have always been one of the OGs, and top dogs as far as organized crime goes. Because there's an awful lot of, outlaw groups and that kind of thing, and there's substantially, like, this kind of turn of the century, early 1900s. This was the beginning of organized crime.
Right.
Because the world was starting to become more civilized. The cities were being built, and
Mm,
the way people had to deal with and react to crime meant they had to be a bit smarter about it and a bit more organized and a bit more underhanded and a bit more cloak and dagger, so presenting yourself as a completely law-abiding citizen who absolutely is just a businessman and has never done anything wrong in his life. And then on the other hand, you're having people brought out into the woods and shot.
yeah.
So
That plays into this next conversation pretty well. Like as a character who's overall gray, at least presenting as gray, how do you manage like that sort of trust that you have with, let's say, just ordinary citizens in Rhodes, especially now that there's more people there, and also law? Like how do you manage that sort of trust that nothing crazy is going on? You know what I mean?
um what do you mean? Can I ask you ask that question again? Sorry, I don't know that
So
I understood the question
So,
entirely.
like, as a gray character overall, I mean, how are
Hmm.
you, when you have businesses and you're also like you said, shooting someone in the trees or whatever business the Pavee have going on, that is a little bit more nefarious, and then at the same time, you're also just presenting as a businessman to law citizens. Uh, there has to be a level of trust involved between the two of you when you're so active within the community, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So balancing that and maintaining it is what I'm curious about.
yeah. Well, I think as honest and kind of upfront and blunt as Mick has a tendency to be, he is very two-faced in a lot of senses, and where
Yeah,
he kind of has to be, unfortunately, because he lives two very different lives. He has the life of the businessman where he's walking around roads and he's saying hello to all the people who live there, and oftentimes he's brought tea or coffee up to the porch with the deputies, and he'll stand there and he'll give them
crazy.
cups of tea and coffee, and he'll ask them how their
Mhm.
day is going and how things are. And you know he'll play up the niceties of, oh, I'm the good guy, I'm nothing wrong about me, don't worry about me or what I'm doing. I'm just Mick here with a cup of tea, don't mind me. So there is that, but there is characters within that where they find their kind of place where they're like, you know cut the bullshit, I know
Right.
exactly who you are and what you're doing. um and there's been deputies who've done that in the past, and they've done it really in a really cool and really tasteful manner. I mean, one of my favorite ones was the kind of relationship that was happening between the former sheriff of Rhodes, Sylvie Chevalier. Shout out to Lit on that one. She was so cool, and it's a shame we didn't get to go much further with the story, but she had kind of a thing where even her character was like, I know exactly what you're doing. um and it played into it really, really cool, and they had a very interesting relationship, even though she was the sheriff of Rhodes. And ultimately, having a group like the Pavee and that campsite in your town is not a good thing. It's inviting all sorts of crime and criminality to the place that you live. And in a sense, it should be dealt with. And we've always been pretty put ourselves out there to allow ourselves to be caught by the department, in a lot of ways. But playing the fine line, I think, has been it's always very interesting. But I think the Sibs play into it more, where there's a little bit of fear behind it as well,
Oh
where
yeah.
the kind they understand the kind of person, that people that they're dealing with. And
Oh yeah.
they're aware that, if the fact that they live in roads, that stepping on toes too much could affect their lives going forward.
Oh yeah, for sure. Has Mick I'm actually just curious, really, has
Hmm.
Mick ever been arrested?
Mick has been arrested. Not many
Really?
times. Not many times. He's only been, I think, in the entire time he's existed on the server, I think he's been arrested twice.
Wow.
Wow, that's
And
Yeah.
actually
how many
really
years?
shocking to me because of how
Y-
entwined he is in a
5
whole bunch of
years?
things.
Yeah, but the August 1900, so
Mm.
2020, 2021, I think. So yeah, about 5 years.
Holy shit. That's crazy.
Um,
Well, and that's a tightrope, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
you manage a fascinating balance. You have your Mick has his schemes going on, obviously. The server largely, I think, views you as a lawful character. At least that's the front that Millie or that Mick puts out. Like, how do you walk that tightrope without tipping too far in either direction? Because you don't want to be fully an outlaw, but you're also not exactly a civilian either.
so I mean, the beauty of that is in the sort of the organized crime element. You look at stuff like The Godfather. You look at Don Corleone, or you look at things like that.
Mm.
Like generally, the people at the top aren't always the ones doing the things.
Right.
Yeah.
They're the ones giving the orders, but they're not the ones necessarily out there on the road putting beatings down on people or whatever it may be. So there's definitely been a time or a place where Mick has had to step in and had to step up and do and deal with things. But I always just like giving that to other people, and
Right.
it not all being about me, and not always having to be the one at the front of a scene. I'm just like, why don't you deal with that? Send a couple of the other guys in the group to go deal with something, and allow them to have their moment to step up, and allow them to be the ones at the forefront of a scene. So I think that's definitely played into part of the reason as to why Mick has never really been arrested.
Right.
I mean, as far as I'm aware, you know, I also don't think weapons trafficking is actually a charge in Wild. So I don't think that's something that Mick could actually get arrested for.
No, I don't think
Which
it's
is something
illegal. Yeah.
yeah, which is something I wish was changed a little bit, but because I'd love nothing more than for people to investigate and have like a huge high scale investigation into the
That would
Pavee,
be a really big deal. Imagine
and
if they went
see.
like completely undercover, like,
It'd be sick. Like early days, we
yeah.
had a lot of we had some people do some we had some people doing some undercover sting operation things, and I knew behind the scenes there was something in preparation that I was so excited for, where the department were working on orchestrating this enormous sting operation, where they were basically we were gonna host the members of the department up at the campsite for a big dinner, and they were gonna turn it around and arrest us all and drag us into the station and fingerprint us all, because we'd existed in the server for nearly 2 years and none of us had fingerprints.
I love
Um,
that.
or
Wow.
proper citizen
I
registries.
actually think I remember that now that you say that, because I remember on Clarabelle there being this whole thing about mixed fingerprints and wanting. I think they were trying to figure out if you guys were tied to some crimes. I think I remember that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the only times I've been arrested were for recently. I suppose we're okay for a little bit of meta, are we?
Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
forgot to give the disclaimer on the top
Yeah,
of the
we did.
show, but just for everyone listening, we are talking about active storylines. We're trying not to spoil anything that's happened in the last day or two, to give people space to learn about stuff I see. But we're okay to talk about stuff. I wouldn't reveal any major story stuff, but
Yeah,
feel
well, a
free
lot
to
of this
talk
is in the
about it.
Mhm.
past, I
Yeah.
think. So
Mhm.
but I mean, recently the only thing Mick was arrested for was he had a bit of a dealing with Salem, because Salem was the one who shot him when Fort Mercer came knocking. Um, and so when in dealing with Salem, there was an undersheriff and a couple of up to those in the department that showed up in the pub in the middle of us kind of enacting our own sense of justice on Salem. and having to kind of bullshit our way out of it. But Mick did end up getting brought in for that. But the only other thing he was arrested for was when we were having a pretty large scale conflict with the Barton gang, Donnie Barton and the Bartons way back when. Because again, it stemmed down to, Mick was a huge supporter and investor in the people that were operating out of the Parlour House at the time. And so much so that the Bartons had a hand in the death of one of the characters that ran the Parlour House. And then the person that was left was continuing to be threatened. And Mick basically said, leave her alone, because we're looking out for her because we've paid a lot of money into that business. So you're stepping on our business by doing it. And they eventually got their hands on him and put a pretty severe beating on him, and he was caught pretty almost exactly red-handed, because he was covered almost hand to shoulder in blood that wasn't his. So there was no explaining his way.
No way out of it.
There was no explaining
You're
his way out
done.
of it.
You're done.
He was like, yeah. There's not a whole lot I could say here that'll get me out of this. So
That's funny.
he just sort of put his hands up and says, yeah, I did it.
Yeah.
Take me in.
God, he would be a
Take me
fun
in.
person to run into in Sisika.
Yeah, and that was I mean, that whole thing was amazing because the guy that Donnie Barton was arrested as well. So he was in Sisika injured when Mick arrived, and then we had an amazing scene in Sisika because Mick was kind of in a sense he was surrounded by his enemies, because the two gangs that had teamed up to go to war against them were in Sisika, and he was in there on his own. But in a sense, it was also kind of weird because the guards and the deputies treated Mick very fairly, and they were like, you know what, fair play to you. We respect what you did. He was an asshole, and he was he was whatever. So much so that our precious guard Mary didn't shave off Mick's beard, which I'm ever so thankful for because he looks disgraceful under that beard. But having a scene with the guy that you've more or less beaten senseless, and you're sat down in Sisika across the table from one another, and we decided to play chess. So I linked the player a link to online chess, and we were playing a chess game, and
that's awesome.
And it played out almost exactly how the storyline played out. So we had gotten the upper hand quite early, but the way the chess game played out was Mick was winning quite early on, and then the table turned and Donnie Barton ended up getting him in checkmate. So
wow.
And that's the way it kind of played out too. I mean, we kind of consistently had this advantage until at the very end, Mick and Donnie ended up having this standoff between one another, where we had Donnie dead to rights, and Mick ordered him to be taken out of his handcuffs, and he handed him a knife, and the two of them had a pop at each other, and Donnie was the one who proved victorious. So
that's awesome. Yeah, Sisika is definitely a scary place to go, especially when your enemies are there. It's a very scary ground to walk on. It can humble you, no matter what character you are.
I love it, but we've always almost as well tried to use it as a storytelling mechanism in a way. Early on we used to try and smuggle things in and out of Sisika, and we'd intentionally have people be arrested so that they could bring things into Sisika, or they could bring things out of Sisika, or they could get messages to people in Sisika without it being over Telegram or whatever it may be. And so it's, it definitely has its function in that space too, which I think is really cool.
Definitely. Yeah, smuggling is a really fun concept. It's hard to do, fun to try. For sure.
So Mick has been in the server for over 5 years. And with that continuous voice in an environment where, you know, people frequently cycle through different characters or storylines. What's kind of your secret to keeping that single identity evolving without hitting a creative wall?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, you know, for the longest time, I don't think what I was trying to do with Mick really changed. You know, because I've always been in the mindset of, you know, the way I play Mick is as a service role. He's there to
Mm-hmm.
provide a service to people. He's there to be their fence when necessary. And trying to provide a cool scene for those who want to take part in that. So that in and of itself hasn't really changed, and even now, it's not really changed either. It's just been scaled up. You know, like with owning the pub and the fight club that'll be opening soon. Fingers crossed, hopefully. But having your fingers in a lot of pies is basically the way that it's been kind of scalable and making trying to build on the reputation you had and compounding on it to turn it into something else. But I don't think at its core it ever really changes, because I like to play a character for a reason, and if I ever feel like I don't want to play that character for that reason anymore, I'll just play another character.
Right.
I'm very kind of blinkered in that sense, where now, that being said, also, what Mick does is very diverse. He deals in everything and anything, much to what he says, from horses, guns, gold, bonds, gems. Like, his market is pretty wide open. So it allows you to be a little bit more fluid and then deal with all sorts of kind of people. But I'm always of the opinion that if I didn't like doing what I made him for, I'd just go play somebody else.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and that totally makes sense. But there's also been like many ups and downs in Rhodes, right? Being anchored to that location. Right now, I don't know if Rhodes has ever been as bustling as it is, in the last couple of weeks. Do you find it how has Rhodes changed over the years from when you started to now?
It's definitely come in ebbs and flows for sure. I mean, before I arrived on Wild, I mean, even back when I played on PRC, like the decision to either come to Wild or PRC was ultimately one that ended up with us going to PRC. But that was back when Wild was 32 players only. Um, that
Wow.
was the entire
That's crazy.
server
32 for
pop.
the whole server. 32
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
that
the
was the
at
whole
one time.
max.
server.
That was the max. Yeah,
Holy. And for such a big map, my dear lord.
Yeah,
That's
so it
crazy.
was.
that's like the EU. That's like the overnight hour totals now.
Yeah, so it was crazy. Um,
Damn.
but we made the decision to go to PRC. But I believe at that time, Rhodes was like the place to be. Rhodes was one of the initial towns on the server, probably due to its size. It's like you said earlier, it's got nearly everything. It's got you got your gun store, your telegram, your medical office, your law department, your tailor, your parlor house. It's only missing a wagon depot, and then you literally have everything. But when we started, it was pretty quiet. Like,
Yeah.
one of the only significant sort of players in Rhodes was, you had Flood and Cooper Garrett, who they ran the Rhodes gun store, and Mick still talks about all the time. He became very good friends with Flood, and the town was quite quiet, and they had a bit of a bumpy beginning in their relationship, seeing as they both dealt in firearms. Um, and we were definitely stepping on Flood's toes when we started, for sure. But I think the relationship moved on, and they became quite good friends. And but Rhodes, yeah, like you said, Rhodes has never really seen this kind of amount of people here, and that was kind of something that I came in very intentionally with this time on Mick, where I was like, this is what I want to focus on. I was like, I want to focus on trying to get every space in Rhodes with role players. Like I wanted the gun store to have somebody there that's actively there, where you know you can go to the Rhodes gun store and get yourself a gun off a player and not have to just deal with the mechanical menu, where you could go to the general store and you could deal with a player, where you could go to the parlor house and deal with a player. So like what I wanted was to create a space where all sorts of players, civilian, criminal, and otherwise, lived within this town boundary, and it felt like a living, breathing town that
Mhm.
anybody can sort of be a part of. And it's been an absolute blast to and I wouldn't be able to do it without not just the help of the people in my group, but the likes of people like Talon, who plays Freddie Foster and the Rhodes Reading Room. Like he's been
There's some
immensely
really
like
cool
in
businesses going
yeah,
on.
like
Yeah.
Mhm.
so there's and all the people that exist in Rhodes, and like Stumpy has moved out to the general store now, and Murdoch has moved out to the
What I was
parlor
saying.
house. So it's been really, really cool seeing a lot of these players that, because I would have never really dealt with Murdoch because I'd never have a reason to go to Armadillo, you know?
Right.
Mhm.
So it's been fun getting to interact with all these new characters and players who traditionally would have been based in locations where my character would not have necessarily had a reason to go.
Mhm.
Um, that's just the way I decide to play Mick, is that unless he has a reason to go somewhere, he's not going to go there. Um, and due to his unfortunate Irish complexion, the weather in the West just doesn't have a tendency to treat him as fairly. So,
Right. Have you had any like I automatically want to say troubles, but it doesn't have to necessarily be troubles, but just interesting sort of like dynamics with people that Mick has never met before, where like you are establishing the fact that a lot of people know who he is, right? He is that anchor. He is this very lived in personality in Rhodes, a very powerful personality. Like, has there ever been any like situations where you may have had to like check somebody or, you know, where people don't necessarily know who he is right off the bat and have to like kind of learn maybe the hard way,
Eh,
maybe not.
more often than not, I kind of just prefer to play, to let people kind of, I oftentimes I've said it to on Mick, where he'll give you enough rope to hang yourself, you know.
Okay,
So
that's fair.
I it's never been a case where he's had to check people. Mick will happily just kind of sit there and nod and be like, "Yeah, how are you getting on? How are things?" And
Mhm.
he won't be like, "I'm this. This is who I am." He'll just let you figure it out on your own.
Right, that's fair.
And I think it's you know it's I think it's more entertaining that way, because it's less like, it's less like you're coming down on somebody for not knowing something, and
Mhm.
you just treat them as you would anybody. And if it happens where there's something done where there's a necessity for a response, then that's when it'll come. But you always tend to cross that bridge when you come to it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I
If
kind of
you
no, go ahead.
no, you're
Because
up.
my question is like way on a different level.
That's okay. I was pivoting too. Go ahead.
These are great
Okay,
questions, by the way. Can I
Oh,
just say that these
thank
these have
you.
been great
We
questions so
we
far.
good.
we try. We're not.
I
We're
wasn't.
we're
I was.
learning every episode. We're getting better.
Yeah.
I was sitting around earlier today and even yesterday, and I was like, I have no idea what they're going to even ask me. I feel so unprepared, but Jesus, I
That's the
said it.
best
I was
part. You
like,
just be yourself. That's all it is.
I'm
That's yeah.
I'm enough of a shit talker where I'd be this could be a fucking 6 hour podcast if they just keep letting me talk.
Well,
It's like
Oh,
I
this
will
is
same.
really the challenge. At some
I
point, we have to cut people off because it's kind of where we have talked about many times, Dove and I, about when we were discussing starting the podcast and having these conversations with people. Um, is the winning formula for us is we have this community of people who know how to yes and carry a conversation. I mean, this is what we
Yeah.
do in role play every day. So,
Mhm.
you just
Yeah.
have to get the ball rolling and the conversation tells itself. So it's been a lot of fun.
And I always say, I feel like as role players, we're kind of like narcissistic in a way. We all want to talk about it and our characters. So like, it just it does it on its own. It really does. No matter who you talk to. But anyway, what I was going to say, which I feel like, because we can go on and on how Mick is an awesome character and how he has this sort of presence about him and everything else, but I'm not sure that anyone's touched on or really appreciated the fact that you know your history
Yeah.
really well. And it comes through in little moments. Sometimes it doesn't, because it doesn't, right? You're not just going to randomly go off on like a history tangent, but it comes through and it surprises you. Like, I think I've had a few interactions with Mick on Jolene where it's come through at the bar, or like he's singing a song and then Jolene is just being silly goofy, doesn't know anything, and then he just tells you this whole history of where this song came from or where people came from, like this, and it's amazing. And I'm just curious, like, are you like a history buff, or did you just like do your research before making the character, or where? I guess where does that come from?
I think I mean I am a big fan. I do love history in and of itself, and
Mhm.
I mean, it's I don't generally touch on an awful lot of it, on too much of it in Wild, just because, some of the rules kind of
Yeah,
don't really
yeah,
let you to. But this particular time period in history, the time, like the turn of the 20th century,
mm,
is a immensely pivotal and crucial point in like Irish history, like 1847 was the worst year of like the Great Hunger, the famine, and that led, over 1 million people to sort of flee to the United States, to America, and create a life for themselves. And then obviously you're running up to 1916 and 1921 when Ireland gets its independence from the United Kingdom. So like this particular time in history is so pivotal, and I love just touching on it all. And I mean, I did an awful lot of research because, you know I'm I'm just a fella from Dublin, so
mm,
I'm not an Irish. I'm not a traveler, but so I have friends who are, and I spoke to them, and I did an awful lot of research, and I drew from some elements of media where there's caricatures made of them. Like, I don't know if either of you have seen the movie Snatch by Guy Ritchie.
Oh,
Like,
I
there's
fucking love that movie. Can we talk about how great that
so
movie is? Do you like dogs?
so yeah. Do you like dags? My mother's partial to the
yeah.
periwinkle blue, boys.
Yeah, I like
So,
dogs.
that gag has always been a bit of a running meme for us. Playing the the caricature of the Irish traveler, but then trying to be tasteful about it, because I think it's a particular culture group that is so immensely rich with
Hmm.
history and lore. Like their whole culture is about storytelling. Like, they don't write anything down. Like, they're one of the oldest culture groups that have existed in Ireland. Like, they relate back to the medieval Tua clan culture, where everybody existed in these kind of tight knit family groups, and there was kings all over the country, and everything was told by the fire, like, and everything was passed from generation to generation through songs and through stories. And And I was like, that's just like the most perfect character concept to come in on a roleplay server and just, tell people these stories and sing songs and then tell the story behind the song. And,
Mm.
because I think definitely people also have their own ideas about Ireland and what it is and the history it has. And I love kind of just explaining some of it to the characters and that have existed in the world, because there's such a rich history and of it there available, whatever it may be. And it's made its impact across the world. I think it's definitely punched up for such a small country. So I've been immensely sort of proud to find myself in that position where I get to share these songs and stories with people who've maybe never heard them before.
I was gonna say I don't know anything about Ireland's history whatsoever. So, like, I personally have learned a lot through you, which you probably didn't even know, which is the fun part of roleplay. You don't know the impact that you actually have on somebody. But, like, I never knew a lot of the stuff that you taught Jolene, or even just the fact that Pavee isn't just, like, a name that you came up with. Like, it's an actual,
Yeah,
I had no idea.
yeah. I
So
think
that's the really fun part about your character and you, really.
that I think that's been the widest misunderstanding sort of across the server, is that the Pavee isn't just a name we came up with, but it's the
Mm.
culture group that our characters belong to. It's just
Mm.
it's another name for Irish traveler, in the same way that Romani is a name for
Yeah.
those particular travelers that came from other parts of
Yeah,
Europe.
that's so
Um,
interesting. Yeah,
so
I had no idea.
it's always been fun, because it was the name that stuck, and many characters still maybe don't understand the reason behind the name. And I kind of enjoy the mystery in it as well, in that sense.
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple clips
Ooh.
if we want to pivot and show a couple of Mick
Yeah,
Murphy moments.
yeah,
I gotta reload this because I believe you sent me an updated timestamp.
yeah. Because I don't stream myself, just because I think I did stream briefly for a little while at the start of my playtime on Wild, but I just felt like it didn't help with where I sat as Mick. I felt like I was
Mhm.
always half Mick and then half me. Like I wasn't
That's fair.
fully committed to Mick, because I was looking at the chat, or I was,
Yep.
and then sometimes I'd end up getting into conversations with somebody in chat, and then I could be completely out of the scene I was in. And
Yep.
that
sometimes
definitely
it just felt
happens.
this, it just felt disrespectful to. I just didn't have the attention span to be able to deal with both at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm a little scatterbrained in that sense, so I kind of need one thing, and I'll focus on that one thing. Um, because if I don't, nothing will get done.
That's happened to me many times, so I get it. Yeah, that's fair.
All right, we're gonna try and see if we got the audio and everything working this time, because I tend to screw this up every time. So we're gonna double check that
One of the
our
few
Whoa.
clips.
What
This
is
is,
my
3 years ago.
three
why is
years
my thing
ago
not working?
we will
What do you?
stand by. Oh, I gotta make. Oh, Mick left the. Okay, I gotta turn your thing off for a moment.
Yeah, when I share over here, it doesn't. Interesting. Okay, well, I guess you don't need to see me for a minute.
Are we having technical difficulties?
Maybe. It's just for some reason when I transition to this scene, it doesn't show my cam.
Weird.
Very weird. Got my name and everything.
All right, we
Anyway,
ready?
it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Look who it is.
It might be because
Oh,
Would you look who it
Hey, would
is
you look
now?
at that now? How are you keeping me old flower?
gentlemen, good to see you. It's been a while since I come back around here.
How's she cutting?
Been
How's
far
she
too
keeping?
long.
She's keeping great, keeping great.
It's been fucking donkey's years since I seen you last. Now, this is
Oh yeah, oh yeah, many a donkeys.
I'll tell you
Damn,
now.
damn. Yeah,
Tell you now.
fucking the
Sharp as ever.
donkeys.
Sharp as the tack horses out of here, huh?
That he is, that he is.
Yeah. Hey, listen,
Tell us now, what is it that we can do for you today?
listen, gentlemen. This matter is more of a syndicate matter.
Okay.
Well, we love to hear it.
All right. Well, I have someone that I'd like to bring forward and perhaps join us all in the syndicate. So I'm going to all the organizations, having them approve or otherwise. And unless we have a unanimous vote here, it's not going to happen. So I'd like to hear your perspective of things, your opinion, and perhaps we can make it happen. By the way, this I know I
You can
understand
probably
you guys
skip to the
had
628
referred.
one, because this was a bit of just a back and forth. Is that 628? Yeah. This is just a bit of a back and forth about the syndicate business, but there's a funny little moment where you can see the sort of buying and selling and the haggling and the dealing, which is the funnier moment in this interaction.
It wasn't looking too great. They had a whole bunch of conflict in the city with the city, right? Tiny Tony's more of a
How about
neutral
here?
party.
Tiny Tony
And
call out.
he like you said, he's got that little magic that brings business towards him. So I thought he would be a great, a great fit for the Bastille, and so he is. So let's see how things go, and I'm glad you guys are already a step ahead. I'm looking forward to it. Wish you all the best.
Of course.
Onwards and upwards, always. Always.
That's right.
Ever the entrepreneurs, Cesare. Ever the entrepreneurs.
Opportunist by trade.
There you go. All right, gentlemen. Well, listen. I have a gun that I wanted to actually show you guys.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
It's a beautiful piece for us. Absolutely.
Look at
Music
that.
to our ears.
Oh
by.
my God.
There's nothing that brings a bigger smile to our faces.
Oh,
Wonderful.
sorry. I didn't think you could make this day any better.
Now, listen. I don't know if I want to sell the gun, but I want to know its value. Do you guys do that?
Oh,
We can indeed, yeah.
Cars.
It's a treat just being able to look at a fine piece.
Oh, of course. And, the pieces that, after seeing your revolver yourself, Cesare, I mean, it could only be the finest.
I certainly appreciate that. Let me bring it over. It's in my bank, and I think it's quite the piece. So I'll be right back.
Oh,
Right?
well, Jesus, you have me brimming with excitement now, boy. Come on, hurry down there now and fetch it.
All right.
Before you go, Mr. DiCenzo, before you head to the bank, is there anything else we can do for you? Any guns you're looking to buy just to save you?
So what was going on there? What's the history behind this?
So it's funny, like there's a bit of back and forth as he goes on into this, and there's a bit of a humorous back and forth between Mick and his brother, which I think is partially what I miss from having obviously Shay around is the back and forth we had, and it's actually a little bit further on from this, but Z-Tark just captured the kind of humor and the fun that we got to have in these little small business moments. But the bigger scene here was him approaching us about the syndicate that sort of fell apart, which was, a giant sort of alliance of a couple of different gangs, Taipan, the DiCenzos, the Dead End Gang, and obviously us based. It was mostly a lot of big organizations and crews based out of the east almost, sort of to combat. At the time, a lot of the Western gangs were all teaming up and working out of Thieves Landing, so it was sort of in a direct contrast to what they were doing there.
The Eastern Coalition, yeah. We have one more here, which I think is a little bit more of a funny one.
Budget talk.
Do you want to fucking go?
Oh, you want to?
that horse?
Oh, I'll show you how it is, you fucking pipsqueak.
Don't know that horse, you.
Oh my God! I'm gonna punch you in your kidneys! Punch you in your kidneys, you fucking pipsqueak! Ain't that the truth? Oh, you're gonna be pissing blood for a couple of days. You fuck! Ain't that the truth? Stop flapping your
I love
gums
Sean.
about my torch, you pipsqueak.
You fucking bastard.
Oh,
Get you.
Calling Mick a pipsqueak.
You watch it.
Crazy.
oh, is that right?
Fucking days are numbered.
Fuck you, pipsqueak.
Fuck you, you pipsqueak.
Yeah, that one was
Uh,
fucking brilliant.
That's
That's
great.
so good.
When Millie left the hospital when she was delusional, he punched her in the kidney. Well, she was like on attention. He punched her in the kidney. She was like passed out in the middle of Valentine when she was on her whole grand adventure. He
Oh my
was
God.
he was a
Yeah.
menace. She
It's
didn't
also
have a-
hilarious because had he punched the other side of Mick, he doesn't have a kidney there anymore. So
Oh, you could have. Yeah, that's funny.
So it would have been funny to play into that, but also just Sean is great, and that was
Oh.
very funny. I think I laid on the ground and just laughed for the next 5 minutes when that happened. I could not stop laughing.
I love that. He's so funny.
What am I gonna do?
That's a close up of Mick. First person fighting you
That's
never
so
see this.
weird.
We don't want to knock nobody out.
God, Mick looks scared.
He does, damn.
Is this Gideon? Or what is Gideon?
The little talk, like
Stupid nose off your face! I'll take you out.
him talking the whole time is great. Too.
$100 on the ball.
That's awesome. Hey, is that Pearl?
Y'all saw it here first.
He's great.
Shut up,
That was
Gideon.
so
Get out
funny.
of here.
Yeah.
Nobody
That
has.
first person fight, that's a great clip. What the heck?
Mm-hmm. That was really good.
We got
Because
one.
Gideon, for no reason other than I think me and Coco just liked having our characters dislike each other,
Yeah.
was hilarious. Like the entire time, anytime Mick ever seen Gideon, he would just grumble and just be like, "Fucking Graves, you're here to ruin my fucking day, you are." It was for no reason
He's a fun
Other
one to
than-
beef with.
other than Coco is just. It's just a blast to have a bit of a back and forth with it, and we just had so much fun with it.
He's great.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Ready now? I know you're not ready all of a sudden.
Lots of fights. Mick's got a good stature to him. He's,
Come on! Where's the Sicilian lion? Huh? Where is he? Where is he? I don't see him! I don't see him! Motherfucker! Where are you? Roar! You don't want to be motherfucker, me, motherfucker!
There he is, the lion's come back to life. The Sicilian lion bear is the Irish bear. Oh shit! They might be winning.
so who's he fighting here?
Oh!
That is Amadeo Moretti, who at one point was another of the big Italian sort of mob groups in the city, and he used to organize a lot of the fights initially in the Lions Den when they first opened, I think.
I need to find.
Most of now that come to think of it, nearly all the clips that I sent you are nearly all fights.
Yeah.
Of some
yeah,
sense.
a little
He's
bit.
passionate about fighting, huh?
Well, that's the thing, like, is even in sort of like the culture of travelers, like every young man knows how to fight coming up. Like horses are a part of their culture because they can't live their life without horses. You know, like like if they don't have a horse, they don't have anything to pull their wagon. They don't have anything to move their home. You know, so horses are as much their way of life as anything else is. You know, and any you know, you're brought up to learn how to ride a horse almost at the same time. So that in saying that as well, the fighting and you know that's almost how you proved yourself to be a man in traveler communities was you had to fight, and if you had a problem with somebody, you'd say let's fight it out and square it off and have a knock, and then whoever wins, you get up and you shake hands and you dust it off and say it's gone, it's in the past, we've forgotten about it now.
Do a fade.
Which we've which we've done with a couple of groups that we've had issues with, where you know, rather than it resulting in people getting shot or stabbed, or you know, it hasn't been like too much of a big deal that it needed somebody to be shot. It's like we've resorted to being like, let's have a fight. Get your fella here. Here's my fella, and let's have a knock. And whoever wins, let's shake hands and forget about it. You know, like we had it like early on. We had an issue with the DiCenzos. That's how it was dealt. The McKinley brothers, and Jesse
the
McKinley's
McKinleys.
gang.
Yeah.
So one of the McKinley brothers, we were
Rude
gonna
Boys.
the Rude Boys were one of the first people we had a genuine conflict with, and then they separated, and one of the Rude Boys we were gonna come down pretty hard on, but then Jesse McKinley had his own crew, and they confronted us in Rhodes one day, and we said, look, we don't have a problem with you, we have a problem with your brother, and you know, we're probably going to get our hands on him. And they were kind of trying to find a way to fix the relationship with us. And we were like, right, how do we fix this relationship? Because we still don't really like you. And what we ultimately decided on was basically having a giant 6v6 fist fight in front of the Welcome to Rhodes sign. And,
At the same time?
Yeah, everybody.
Oh my god. Like a mosh pit.
Yeah, it was 6v6, and I think we scraped through by the skin of our teeth, and one of ours was left standing. And to make it even funnier, you know, Sheriff Bolton Yeka, who walked up at the end and just made it very clear. She was like, "All right, Jesse, get out of here. You've already had your ass kicked enough today." And sort of sent them on out of town rather than arresting them, which I thought was really cool.
Bolton's great.
Yeah, brilliant character.
Doesn't surprise me.
Brilliant character.
She's a rock star. Yeah.
100%. Well, do we want to do the quick
Is
questions?
it time? Is it time to fan the hammer
I feel like
Mr.
it is.
McMurphy here?
Oh.
Okay. So we have a segment at the end of every podcast, Nerfman, where we call fanning the hammer, where we ask you 10 questions, quick style. First thing that comes to mind, feel free to expand on the ones that you want, but the idea is that you're not spending a whole time thinking about them. They're relatively simple. I'll kick this off, which might be I'd be interested to hear. But first of all, Nerfman, are you ready?
I'm not sure, but I suppose I am, yeah.
All right. Our first question.
That's kind of ready.
Yeah, I'm as ready as I'm going to be. Or as Mick would say, I'm born ready.
I'm born ready. There you go. Blackwater or Saint Denis?
Oh, Saint Denis.
We don't have a lot of people say Saint Denis. I love that.
Saint Denis. Yeah, Saint Denis for sure. You know? It's reminiscent of New York way more. The tall buildings, narrow streets, cobblestones. Yeah, all day.
Wow.
It's gorgeous, you know. And some of the interiors there are beautiful. You know, the docklands are great. You know, I really enjoy it. You know, even though I know a lot of people don't like it, and Mick doesn't really love it as a character, but me, Celie, I love it. I love it.
True.
I think it's a really, really gorgeous. You know, it's like it's the same way. You know, I think when people kind of go, "Oh, I don't like the West," or "Don't like Armadillo," or "I don't like Tumbleweed." If you're there enough and you catch it in the right time of day, like God, it's gorgeous.
And there's very
And
little
Sydney has a lot of
parts
culture
of-
behind it.
Yeah, it does.
It's great.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's New Orleans, for lack of a better
I
term.
love New
It's
Orleans. Ugh,
it's
sorry.
stunning. So it's and having sort of the different quadrants and quarters and boroughs, if you will, of like, the kind of very poor neighborhood in the northeast to the west side of Saint Denis being immensely wealthy and just full of manors and estates, and the kind of the stark contrast between how people live in that city, I think, is really cool.
And the architectural change between it all, like
Like the little church up in behind Doyle's is I think a gorgeous little spot like that. That little church is great, and I've had a couple of really cool scenes there. A couple of really really cool scenes. I think it's an underappreciated part of the city.
yeah. Okay, before we get too distracted, okay. Next one. What is your
I meant to just answer the questions. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I
You're
mean,
good. That was a good
it's
answer.
fine.
That was
It's
a good
fine.
answer. You did good.
It's fine. Okay, this is an interesting one. What is your favorite sound in the crossing?
Oh, sound.
It could be like something as simple as like sitting in Mick's favorite spot and just hearing the background, or like, that sort of thing.
I mean, it's hard to beat the sort of ambience of Big Valley. It's hard to beat that. The kind of the sounds of the nature and like the elk calling out and sort of it's
And the echoing.
it's very sort of transient, and like if it'd be the perfect place to sort of meditate if that's what you were into.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know the answer to this one. But I have a guess. But do you trust your gut or do you trust the dice?
I trust me gut. I trust me gut. I used to do some dice roll stuff just because that's where my RP started, and I through the little bits of doing D&D and that kind of stuff, I used to do some dice rolls, but I think it served me better, and it served me well to trust my gut on scenarios rather than just leaving it up to the dice gods.
Yeah, that's fair. And pretty much what I predicted, honestly.
Yeah.
This is an interesting question, and I hate always having to be the one to ask it because it's a very What
Yeah,
is there
I
a
think we're gonna
particular?
change this question eventually. We got to think of a better one, but
Yeah, but I mean, is there a particular trend that you've noticed in roleplay or in wild or in maybe even like a little pocket of like Rhodes or wherever else that you wish that you could change?
Yes, and it may be a little controversial. So maybe I think this is just the first thing that came to my head, but
Mhm.
I think gangs are too friendly with each other. I think Mick and Fences are obviously in the position to be on good terms with multiple different people, but I think I'd like to see more gangs duke it out and have issues with each other. And I mean, it's a hard thing to sort of to manage because at least when you are a gang and you're fighting with members of the department, you know exactly what you're signing up for, and that like the LEO staff are taught and trained, and they're told to kind of be very, very giving, and they are immensely giving. But I think sometimes, obviously gang on gangs have a harder time of being giving because obviously everybody, whether there's storytelling or not, there is a part of you that wants your character to to prove victorious or whatever it may be. So sometimes there can be the lack of a giving nature found there, and I think it can draw some tensions between crews. But I think a bit more conflict like that, I think would serve things a lot better, because there'd be a lot more stuff kind of going on. Whereas I think when gangs are all buddies and all friends, not a lot of stuff happens, and the kind of server quietens down for sure.
Mhm.
I think
That's a good one.
that's a fair answer, and I think,
That's a new
like you
answer.
said, you can't. Not everybody needs to get along all the time, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I think that's a great
Mhm.
answer. Is there a book or a movie that has influenced the creation of your characters?
Oh, a book? No, but definitely a couple of movies. I mean, you know, we mentioned it already, but
Snatch.
you know, Snatch was definitely up there, and there's a couple of representations of sort of like travelers and Irish travelers specifically in media, and and I think like there's the TV show version of The Gentleman on Netflix as well. That's another. There's a bunch of Irish travelers in that, which are very funny, and there's a lot of crossover between those characters and what exists in the Murphys and the Pavee. So I think Snatch for sure. I mean, funnily enough, Guy Ritchie actually includes Travelers in an awful lot of his media, and he's a favorite director of mine. Absolutely.
I wish I would have seen, so I know what you're talking about. But
We're gonna have a movie night. I'll watch that with you. I haven't seen it in a long time. It's
okay.
got Brad Pitt in it.
Yeah,
Great
and he's
movie.
gorgeous. He's
Period.
absolutely gorgeous in
Very,
it.
Period.
very hot. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna
Yeah.
say less. All right, that's fine.
not gorgeous. Brad Pitt is all the reason you need to watch that movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, in this case, it's all the reason I have. I mean, really.
He's brilliant in it. Like, and
It's a great.
he was given a very hard time because his accent in it is you know, it's out there
It's certainly
Mhm.
put
for
on. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's out there for sure. But you know, I mean, I like, in that being said, it is also, it's very good, even though it is a caricature. But when you take it for that, it's very good, and he does a very good
Right.
job of it. You know, because I think
Yeah.
it's very easy to do a bad Irish accent.
Oh yeah,
It's just. I mean,
I'm
I did it
sure.
on Clarabelle for 2 years. So.
I wouldn't even try it. I feel like I'd just be
Yeah.
insulting a lot of
But I
people.
mean, no, but that's the thing is, I mean, I've helped an awful lot of people on the server and other servers
Mhm.
develop their Irish accent, because I mean,
I
you
remember
know,
you saying that. Mhm.
imitation is the you know, the
Best form
strongest
of
form of
flattery.
flattery. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, so having somebody that wants to come in and wants to play an Irish character, you know, it's so immensely flattering. And I love seeing people that want to try and make an Irish character, and like, you know, shout out to the people who have played Irish characters. Like recently, I think she was in chat earlier, but like Crispy
She's
Bacon Bits,
and
Neve
Sparkles.
Gallagher,
Oh man,
she's
Nate's
knocked it out of the
accent's
park.
fucking great. Sparkles, who
Yeah, and
just
Sparkles.
posted. I'll just shout her out. She said, Nerfman knows
Yeah.
this, but I just want folks to know how incredible he has been to those of us joining him, and how incredibly lucky we are to have him as a mentor. I'd never had the guts to learn such a complicated accent without him. And I will
That's so
circle
sweet.
back to Sparkle's accent specifically, because I was having a
Yeah,
conversation with the player behind Vix, who is the player behind Loretta, and we were
yeah.
talking about
She thought she
Sparkles.
was Irish.
Well, I mentioned where Sparkles is from, and I'm not going to dox her on the podcast. But she's like, "What? She's not Irish?" She was like, completely, like her mind blew.
That's
And
awesome.
that goes to show that
Yeah,
your
Oh yeah.
mentoring's working. And there's some
Sparkles
incredible,
has done a great job
yeah, oh,
coming
yeah,
along with their accent, and obviously
and
everybody who
Crispy
came
as
with it, you
well.
know.
Crispy well as
Crispy's
well.
accent's great, and a lot of them, like even Mackie with Lorcan O'Lancy, he's been doing a great job. I love it. Like, you know, and in fairness, I found it very funny. There was a bit of an influx of Irish characters all over the server at one stage, and it was like every corner you turned, you were bumping into somebody from Ireland, which I had a good laugh about.
That's
Um,
awesome.
That's
but
great.
I love it. I love it, you know, and I mean, I always say anybody that that has or ever wanted to play an Irish character and is scared or intimidated by the accent. I think it's so. I mean, I've always told people just reach out and DM me. I'm more than happy to sit down and help people work on an accent because there's so many of them. There's so many of them, and
Mom, they
it's
have
beauty.
really good inspiration. I mean, obviously Mick, but also I'm gonna probably butcher this. Ailey?
Ailish.
Ailish,
Ailey. Ailish.
Yeah, and
Is it
that's who we were
Ailish?
talking about. Yeah, that's who I was talking about.
Ailish,
Sparkles.
Sparkles.
She okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So that's an awesome little thing too. She's awesome. She was so cool.
yeah.
And so like those like whenever I think of like Irish characters to be inspired by, those are the first two that come to mind.
You guys are gonna make me
Instantly.
bring back Clarabelle so I can hang with the Irish.
Okay. Are we gonna move on?
Next one.
What is your favorite thing about roleplay? This is an easy question.
Yeah, God, I could talk about that for a long time.
Mhm.
I think I speak not only for myself but everybody. When it's in lack of a better term, it's an escape. It's a great escape. In the same way that you get to wear the clothes and wear the skin of an entirely different person,
Mhm.
and it's just really fun. But just even in the fact that you get to have these sort of live action stories being told, it's great. And I mean it's part of what I love about Red M and Wild especially is like the fluidity and the sort of chaotic nature to it that you never quite know what's going to happen. Any day you log in and you're playing your character, the world is open. The world is your oyster. Anything could happen.
And you
And
might think you have a plan, right? But
there's something
Oh
exciting
yeah.
about it. No matter how much you plan for something, you're
Mhm.
always just going to end up Shit's Creek with a paddle without a paddle, right? And that's and just having
Without
to be able to
fail.
bounce with that on the go, and trying to react to it to the best of your ability is really entertaining and really fun. And but I think what I love most about roleplay, to kind of bring this answer to a close before I keep talking, is I love learning about other people's characters.
Oh
Because
yeah.
people put a lot of time and a lot of effort into creating characters and creating story and creating, like so many aspects of their character. Like everybody has a backstory. Like
yeah.
I think you'd be hard pressed to meet characters who don't have anything.
Mhm.
I understand people have different ways of developing it. Like they might come in without one and develop it on the fly, but you know, I just love meeting people's characters, finding out where they're from, what they're doing here, and what they want to do. And there's a there's just a joy in digging deep into other people and what's going on in their lives, because every character is just as interesting as yours.
Yeah, if it's not a backstory, it's definitely a goal. And then it's like
Hmm.
a reason why that's a goal. So it's always something for sure.
Absolutely.
Um, if you could put a billboard in the middle of Saint Denis that every player would see, what would it say?
Oh God. I mean, off the going trend, it would be for Mick. It would be some sort of inflammatory poetry, but
That's what I was just thinking. That's what I was just thinking.
Do
Hmm.
you know what though? I actually, not to be led, but I wholeheartedly agree with Muzzy on that one.
Yes, and
I think I think yes, anding as much as it is the backbone of role play.
hmm
I think it's important that people lean into it more often than not, because some people I think shy away from it, and they're maybe a little
yeah.
resistant to a yes and on occasion, Where
Yeah.
as if you just kind of let yourself run with it, you never know what might happen. Like it's the beauty of like it's like gambling in a sense. You never know. Let's yes and this, and let's see what road it takes us down. Where you like what
Mhm.
happened with Sean, where he had the opportunity to get a hold of Mick, and that's going to be hilarious next time Dusty and Mick see each other. But that wouldn't have happened if if it was never like yes anded and played into and leaned into in the first place.
Well, it's like improv comedy, if you
Hmm.
ever go to one of those like live or you watch it on YouTube or whatever, it's pretty much the same thing. Like
Yeah,
you're there to base it off of and build off of, I guess, what the person last said and continue it forward.
yeah, and we're
And
all
the
capable
and
of it.
hundred
Everybody's
percent.
capable of it.
Yeah.
Some
There.
some people are probably maybe only are finding their footing and trying to find their confidence in it,
Mhm.
and and I think the onus is on people who maybe have a little bit more experience with it or have a bit more confidence with it to kind of help guide some of the more
Right.
unconfident players through it. Because at the end of the day, we're all a community. We're all here to have a bit of fun. We're all here to play a video game and have a bit of a laugh and tell some cool, interesting, and entertaining stories doing it. So,
Some people
Mhm.
might take their characters very seriously and not want to yes and into something because they don't. But there's ways you can still do that, right, and still be true to your
mhm,
character, even if you're,
absolutely,
not sure about it.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Like
you you
I would.
mm.
Sorry, go ahead, Dove.
I was just gonna say that I like Sailor has mentioned before in a different podcast, the whole like no but, which I think is fair sometimes in situations. So just to
Yeah,
put
there's
it in
another part of yes
context.
anding, which isn't just agreeing with, it's just carrying the conversation. And
Mhm.
sometimes that yes is a no, but,
Yeah,
I'm gonna,
Mhm.
yeah.
yeah. Because I think there's because sometimes it can feel tough when you're trying to have a back and forth and um trying to find a way to tell a collaborative story where sometimes unfortunately you can reach a bit of a stone wall where you know you just can't seem to mesh things together properly, which is a bummer, but I think there's a way to work around it. I mean, I consider Mick a pretty serious character, but he definitely has his goofier moments, and I think there's a beauty in being able to kind of have a bit of both.
Hmm.
Where you can be a little goofy, but then you know have your serious moments, and then
Mhm.
like the weight of who your character is still stands, even if you're gonna have a bit of a laugh and a bit of a back and forth. And I think Millie has been somebody who's seen both sides of Mick for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aw.
Um,
Okay. Um, this is a really good question, actually. Um, so whenever you feel overwhelmed, not focused, I think overstimulated is a good thing to add on to that. Whether it might be Mick feeling that way or you feeling that way, probably a little bit more you. How do you sort of like control that when you're trying to like be active and present in a role play scene or as Mick or anything else?
um, I suppose it entirely depends on the scene in question.
Mhm.
Um, I
Well, I
think
guess.
more often, I think more
I,
often than not, I find myself more overwhelmed with trying to do too much at once rather than one thing at a time. I find that if I am just I find that if not myself not getting too overwhelmed in the sense that if I'm having one direct one-on-one scene, I'm there for it. I'm all about that scene and I'm here. I'm in it. But it's when I'm trying to manage multiple things at once and like or as I like to say, juggling plates, that's
Mhm.
when things start to kind of fall apart. And I think sometimes I just need to take a step back, or I will, speak to another player or another character and ask them if they want to help in it, or maybe, you can kind of have them take some of it off your hands and allow you to kind of have a bit of a breathing room to slow down. But I mean, to kind of answer your character, I think to answer your question, sorry,
Mhm.
I think it's important to have really slow moments for your character. You know, that's why I love having Mick just kind of idle up at the camp, or he'll go and just kind of chill out somewhere, or you know he'll find a moment to kind of be on his own and just relax, and just kind of he'll go fishing, or he'll sit by the fire and pluck away at his banjo or whatever it might be. But trying to find those slow moments in all the drama and the danger and the panic, I think is definitely what helps.
I think that's such an important piece, the way that you told that. And there's a moment I can think of very long time ago. I don't know if it's still a thing in the Rangers, but they used to have like different Rangers were known for different words or like tenets. And one of those words on Clarabelle's early story was there's this like Ranger concept of balance, and having balance and like not just working all the time, but also having time off. And I think that extends to all characters. Like you said, you have to have, sit by the campfire, go fishing, go do something. But I think that's also what rounds out your character so much, right? Like you have this person that's very worldly because they are doing things in the world. And so I think it all kind of ties together. But I think that's a really great answer.
Yeah.
This one's a bit of a tricky question. Sometimes it doesn't really stand out, but is there a purchase that you have made of $100 or less over the years that has improved your experience as a role player? This can be anything at all, but is there anything that comes to mind that kind of falls under that umbrella?
Ooh. I don't know that there necessarily has. I mean, I kind of operate on, a pretty bare bones setup, really. I did broach the idea of sort of building on it to one that could have been considered more liable to stream with. But when I decided I didn't want to do that, then I just kind of kept it with what it was. So nothing has drastically changed between when I started role playing back in 2021 to now. I mean, it's more or less been the very same. I think I don't think I've made any purchase really in that sense. There's things I should purchase, like God, I'd love a stream deck so I could hotkey emotes and make my life so much easier. But
You
I will probably do
can. There's
that.
an app. I haven't
Yeah,
tried it
yeah.
with the app, but some people I
The
think have had some
Elgato Stream Deck
success.
one.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I've heard it's very good.
Yeah, you can on your phone or on a tablet. You can if you like without having a physical Stream Deck, you can still have those functions. There's a way to. I don't know how to do it, but I think there's a way.
Yeah, and Wild having an implementation for that is so cool.
Super great. Yeah, 100%.
Well, that being said, just as a PSA, listen, if you guys are like interested in streaming or you're in your roleplay and you want like a cool little thing called a Go XLR, don't do it. Don't do
You had
it.
nothing but problems with your Go XLR. Yeah.
They TC Helkion whatever.
Yeah.
They laid off the entire support team, the entire Go XLR team, so there is zero support. They are not even in the Discord anymore. The only people running their Discord is just people who got admin status and just are fans of it, and that's it. It's done. It's dead.
Halcyon, you're out of here.
So don't do it. Don't get a Go XLR. Get something else that will last you longer than that.
Yeah, I think Starbar, who plays Alec Doherty, he uses one of them. So
it's rough.
Yeah,
it's rough.
Yeah.
Tech.
I've had a bad time with it recently, with my drivers and everything. That's a whole.
As much as like I kind of enjoy the fact that a lot of the people in my group don't really stream, because I enjoy the kind of mystery that the group has in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like if you want to know about us, come and find us.
There are
You know what I
definitely
mean?
times when I intentionally don't stream, right? Like when
Yeah.
I was this whole like rat situation that Millie was in, you know, I didn't stream any of those scenes because I wanted it to because people do watch streams. I just didn't want I wanted that story to come out organically before I started
Yeah.
streaming those moments. But
Yeah.
but
And sometimes meta happens unintentionally. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's
Yeah.
it's not it's an easy thing to do. You know, so I mean, as much as I love watching streams, it's a case of being very, very careful about what you know and what your character knows.
It's also why I generally don't only
Because
stream the one character. Like if I'm playing another character, I'm not going live. Usually
yeah,
that's where I
yeah,
get
yeah,
my
yeah,
space
yeah,
to just relax and play the game without it being
yeah.
ambiguous, right?
I'm like that though with even, you know, I think that's why I've even found it hard to try and juggle two characters. I have no
Yeah.
idea how
It's rough. It's rough.
anybody plays more than two characters. Like I can barely even find time to play Mick and somebody else. And there's players who have like 4, 5 active characters that they
Oh, that's
play.
too
And I'm like,
much.
where
Yeah.
do you find the time?
And some of them knock everyone out of the park, and
Some
I
of them
don't.
are
Yeah.
amazing. And I'm just gobsmacked by it because I try and add a second character to my routine and it completely messes everything up.
I think the
Um,
key is like when they're so wildly different. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it almost just segregates itself in your brain.
yeah.
Like
It's tough. It's tough for Mick when he knows so much.
true.
For me to then play a character that
Hmm.
doesn't know anything. I'm like, obviously I know who this is. I don't remember if this character has ever met them before.
Yeah.
Whereas with Mick, I'm like, I'm 90% sure I've met you before, Mick, because Mick
Yeah.
just happens to brush shoulders with a lot of people at one point or
I have
another.
to play dumb on my law all the time because I'm like, I know everybody on Millie. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, have we met before? I don't know. You know, like, let's just
But then
pretend I
it's
don't
so
know.
easy, especially in that situation, to like let's say you meet someone and your character doesn't know who they are, but you accidentally act a little bit more suspicious than you should because you know, and then you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So
It's
I mean, the
challenge.
people who can completely separate that, like that's a talent. It's a talent.
We have
100%.
one more rapid fire question for you.
Yes. And it's actually my favorite one. It's actually my favorite.
As
Hit
much
me.
as
Maybe
it's
I'm a little
sad.
bit biased. But if Mick Murphy were to die,
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a little bit of expansion on this that I can do. But what is one thing that you'd like to either hear in his funeral, or like what is one thing that you would like people to reminisce on for him? Either or both.
I mean, I've always joked that Mick will die in some immensely silly or stupid fashion, considering the life that he's lived and the character that he's been. But I'd love if he was remembered not for. I'd love if he was remembered not just for the bad he's done, but for what the good he's tried to do.
Mm.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
Because you know he's by no means an angel, and he is a character who has, you know, he's lived a very, very hard life, and he's suffered an immense amount of loss throughout his entire life, and you know this sort of part of his life, this whole, you know, part of his story has very much been the first time in his life that he's been at the helm and he's been able to kind of lead his life in the direction he wants it to go. And despite having, like I said, despite having done a lot of bad and upset a lot of people and hurt a lot of people. Not that I think he'd ever call himself a good man, because I don't think he is one. I think he, I think he still tries to be, and that's what's important.
Can I expand on this just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Is there something like when you're at a funeral, especially like a actor's funeral, you always kind of like reminisce and think about you can almost hear their voice in your head saying particular things that might stand out to you. Is there a particular line, like if someone could have a haunting Mick voice while they're standing there in black, just like thinking of him, like what would he say? What phrase would that be?
I've had
Quote, I guess.
I've had a quote of his
Mhm.
that I was only talking to people about, and it used to be a quote that everybody in Rhodes and Gallows Hill and the Pavee know it. It was very much the lifeblood of what Mick used to say, and it is don't be sorry, be better. Because
Oh.
I'm gonna
he
cry.
he doesn't want to hear your apology. He just doesn't want you to do it again. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he just wants you to not get yourself into that situation, whether for bad or for worse.
I
It's
can like literally see it happening on
don't
my
I
be
face.
love
sorry, be
that.
better.
I
You
love
know,
that.
and I mean,
Oh.
it's such an interesting idea in question. You know, because over the last like 6 or 7 months, you know, I decided to have Mick kind of step into the role of Undertaker in Rhodes, which has been a really cool take on his character. You know, in the sense that he feels he did it in a sense, he did it in a sense that he felt indebted to Rhodes, because it's the town that forced him to stop, because he's, as much as he was a traveler and he's always moving, and every couple of months they uproot and move again. Rhodes was where he decided to stop, and it's treated him kinder than anywhere before, and the people have treated him kinder than anywhere. And
Steve is upstairs.
you know, he felt a duty to the town when they lost their last Undertaker, that he felt the responsibility was on his shoulders to step in and provide that role and provide that service to the people, so that he can help put people to rest that have unfortunately passed on.
When you started fucking singing as we were coming back from Nacho's funeral, I fucking bawled. So fuck you.
Every time he starts singing,
Yeah,
every time.
I've been told I'm a bit of an emotional terrorist on occasion, so
Yeah.
I mean, we all endeavor to be an emotional terrorist, but god damn, sir. That one was
I felt it
painful.
was a very fitting song in that location, because it's about a man going to the gallows, where he is going to be executed, and he's sort of like he's completely unrepentant for what he's did. He says, he stood by exactly what he did, and he sort of died with his purpose, with his morality intact. And I was like, that felt like a good song to sing after losing a man like Nacho.
You did it. You survived fanning the hammer, Nerfman. You've gotten through the gauntlet of our questions, and so congratulations on that. Thank you so much for being so open with us today and having all these conversations.
Yeah.
If there's any last minute questions in chat, feel free to throw them in there. We can ask them
Absolutely.
before we wrap today. I do have a surprise clip though, if we want
I
to go
think I
back
know
to
what
our
this clip
clip
is
screen.
now, actually. But this is a testament to how amazing also a role player Muzzy is. So I would like to say
Oh.
that, I think.
Can we
So-
say I think I saw him recently on a new character, but I miss playing with Muzi so much.
Muzzy, Muzzy and Zambi. I mean, let's rope Zambi into that too, because I always those two were kind of the unspoken duo when they played Chompy and Hank.
Oh, Chompy and Hank are
Um,
so good. I
they
like
they
so many good
were the
bits.
highlight of my day on many occasions. So
I
you
have
know,
taken so much inspiration from him on the like little shenanigans that Millie does now, and just like the pretending to be a ranger and taking the ranger recruit on a thing. Like all of that kind of like crazy chaos comes directly
yeah. And I
from
mean, this
watching
clip is gonna.
Muzi do this kind of crazy stuff. So anyway,
This clip just shows as well the sort of contrast because Chompy was like not a character to really, he was you didn't fuck about with Chompy, but this was like a complete other side, and to me it was a testament to the
Steve is
range
upstairs.
that Muzzy has. So all the power to him, all the credit to him.
you good weather, Vane? Tough.
Steve is upstairs. He may have fucking caught some of that, but he's probably fine.
Did you beat up this guy yet or no?
Absolutely,
Oh,
I
my
did, of
Christy.
course. Isn't that right, Jericho?
You fucking bastard! You see, you two.
You goddamn.
You fucking put the fear into my daughter like that again. Be more than that from the pair of you.
Sorry. I was trying to get her something to play with.
Trying to get her something to play with. What?
So it's for context. Chompy and Jericho Gunn had scared somebody very close to Mick, and they were terrified. And Mick just bulling, steam coming out of his ears and ankles. And I think Chompy was like showing off a gun or something, or she was trying to get something down from the top shelf with a shotgun, and the gun went off and blew rounds into the air, and they ran out of the room screaming, crying, and ran up to Mick, and Mick went over and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" and just slapped the two of them over the head. and it was all just very, very, very funny. And I remember walking away from that situation just being like, wow, that was a lot of fun. And I mean, not expected from Muzzy or Ross to have done that. I mean, but
I love when
cool
someone's
for them to
giving
have
in
done
that
it.
moment where like you just throw a punch and they just someone just like either hits K or slash kills and just like brings weight to that moment is just takes good timing. So
And it brought weight with an immense sort of sense of humor as well, which I always appreciate. So I love having a laugh about things, even though it might be something serious in character.
well, Dev, I think that brings us mostly to the end here.
It does.
But I would love to thank you one more time, Nerf, for agreeing to come on the podcast, being so generous with your time this week, and with the scheduling conflicts that we had and having to push you back a couple of weeks. Thank you for being flexible.
No harm.
Mostly my fault.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like I said at the start. I mean, I'm immensely flattered that you even considered to have me on. So,
do you have any advice
again
for anybody considering coming on? Somebody who's maybe
that's what we always
nervous?
ask. Yes.
Ooh,
New players, new role players.
for new
All
role
that.
players. It's hard. I think it's hard to sort of give broad stroke advice, but I would say that whatever you're going to do, commit to doing it.
Yeah.
Would be the only thing I'd say. If you want to come in and be a character that's a bad guy, commit to being the bad guy. Don't try and be people's friends. Commit to being the bad guy. Or if you're gonna be a certain character, I think it's better to sometimes have blinkers on and put your character into a particular niche and let them exist in that realm rather than trying to do everything at once.
Good advice.
Otherwise, you'll get overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna ask Dove the question she dreads every week.
What? Why do you do this to me?
Because one day you're gonna remember. One day you're gonna be prepared.
Oh, who are we doing next?
Yeah.
I know who we're doing next.
Oh, do you? I'm so proud of you.
Oh, we talked about it just the other day. So, like, you know.
Do tell. Do tell.
Well, it might be somebody that you're very familiar with, or at least Mick is.
Okay.
Somebody who has also been in the server for a long time.
That could be bloody anybody.
Who's also very influential, who also can mince words, who also can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Mr. Way.
Oh, brilliant.
A-Top will be our guest next week, plays Mr. Way, the iconic leader and businessman of Taipan Industries.
The man, the myth, the legend.
The man, the myth, the legend. And we are very excited to talk to him. So that'll be next Monday around 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if
as you
guys
should, he's a bloody legend
the podcast,
on the server. So
stellar. And so we're very excited to talk to him as we were to talk to you today. Come check out the podcast, please. If you aren't following either of the channels, it really helps us out. Shoot a follow to both aweathervane and myself on Twitch. We will be posting the podcast on Discord as well as YouTube and in both of our respective channels. So there's you can definitely go back and watch what you may have missed. Yep. And if you are interested, if you're a role player and you're interested in being on the podcast, we do have a long list of people, but please let us know if you're interested.
Please don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid to reach out. Exactly. We're happy to talk to you.
There's been many conversations that we have had, even just like she's playing Overwatch and I'm just chilling doing my own thing, and we're like, oh, this person would be fun. This person would be fun. This person would be fun. And it's really hard to keep track. It's hard to, contact everyone. We do contact people and be like, are you interested? Sure. Yeah. It might be months down the line that we talk to you, but we want to know that you're good. So, just don't be afraid. Be like, bruh.
The logistics of it is hard for sure. And I mean, it's hard to choose. I mean, there's so many great players and characters that exist.
Yeah.
On Wild,
especially because, we want to touch base with people who are not necessarily streamers and who might be doing some amazing roleplay behind the scenes that doesn't really necessarily get touched on a lot, and that people do recognize it passing by, but we want to highlight
well,
it.
I mean, I love that and respect it, because I think whether people like it or not, some people are definitely of the other opinion, but I think streamers are important to the roleplay community.
Yes.
I think they're a necessity. So I think that goes without saying. So obviously thank you guys for everything you're doing here with these podcasts. I think they're brilliant, and I look forward to seeing who else you have on, and I mean, I'll definitely be here next week with Derek. I mean, I love the guy. We've had back and forths and role played with each other for a couple of years now, and we don't get to do it as much anymore, which is a damn shame. But we'll see how things pan out in the future.
Never know. See what happens.
Because he is an absolute stellar role player, and he deserves all the praise he gets. So.
Well, thanks again, Nerf. Thank you, Dav, for being an incredible co-host. I couldn't do it without you. And until next week, guys, thanks for tuning in. Keep your boots on the trail and your eyes on the horizon. We'll see you next week into the wild.